Greetings, humans. Today we'll be analyzing two games, one at the 2500 level. This game was played by Derzan Cermak, a GM from Croatia, and also by Hans Ulrich Grunberg, an IM from Germany. The next game we'll be analyzing is a game that was played online. This game is played by two 250 rated players. One is named Ohm, the other is named Sai. Ohm's channel link will be in the description below. So, without further ado, I'll tell you the twist of this. The twist of this analysis is that they'll be playing the same openings, well, relatively same until like the third move in where they change. All right, so let's get started. All right, so the opening will begin with e4, king's pawn opening. Pretty standard. Most of the world plays it. Who plays chess? Bobby Fischer liked it as well. Next is knight to f6, the Alekhine defense, which is good. So instead of playing e5, which ends up in a line where you can just kick the knight around after this, and knight back, and then you get this, which is a strong center. Instead, it goes like, instead it'll go bishop c4, which is the Alekhine defense cardiac variation. Then he plays knight takes e4, which is just a free pawn, almost free. Well, So then, white plays bishop takes f7, check, and his only legal move is to take the bishop. And after that, he plays queen to h5 check. The idea, is obvious. If let's say the king runs out, then knight can jump in. Then there's like a huge attack coming on the king. Okay. But let's say he goes back, then you get queen to d5 forking him. The reason why you couldn't do it before is that after queen to f3 check, knight can block an f6 and you look like a buffoon. So after this, there's a fork and they take, right? So then they kick the king because it's pretty weak. I think the main idea of this opening is to block the development of this rook, but the problem for white is that the queen can be targeted for development, and the king will have some future problems to deal with as well. So, d4, d5, which is the kicking of the queen. Queen e2 and c5, which is just taking more center space. Knight f3, which is just to hit these squares and maybe use them in the future. Knight c6, which is to block white from coming here and playing d4. All right, so then bishop, then d3, obviously, to play bishop here, hitting the queen with tempo, and maybe in the future bringing the knight out, right? So then bishop to e7, blocking this, because then you would just lose a piece, and just developing a piece as well. So bishop f4, just getting more space and developing the bishop, basically. Then bishop f6, hitting the pawn. Even though they moved the piece twice in the opening, it's still fine because it comes with tempo on this pawn, which would win a rook. So then if they play, Derzan plays c3, which is just blocking this attack. Then bishop d7 to just develop the bishop and maybe bring the rooks in. Castles, and queen to b6, which targets this pawn. It's not really hanging right now because the queen protects, but white plays an interesting idea. Knight to d2, giving away the pawn, and you see black doesn't take it, because let's say if black takes the pawn, then they would run into rook to b2. You'll lose this pawn. Even though you gave this pawn back, you'll lose. You can't take right now because the rook's hanging, obviously. I actually think that after it takes, rook b1 would probably be more an accurate move to hit this pawn, and you can just give up this pawn. You get a rook on the 7th rank, and as the card would call it, this is the classic kebab. So yeah, instead of letting that happen, black plays a pretty good move. Rook e8, preparing the move e5. And white, instead of letting that, just plops the knight on e5, which is just blocking it from happening. So then black plays knight takes e5, which is just getting rid of a piece. The reason why this is an almost completely an octopus knight. It hits almost every square it could. This is what's called an octopus knight, but since the d3 pawn isn't here, it's not technically an octopus knight. But just the main idea is the knight's really strong there, so the best move is just to take it, just trade it off. And bishop takes. They're not trading right away because if let's say if takes take, if they even though if black takes, you take, and the queen is like really close to the king. So instead, he plays h5, which is starting to start attack. Knight to f3, and no, white isn't ready to take because this bishop is actually pretty strong here, holding these squares, and there might be some future prospects with this pin. So knight f3, which protects the bishop with an extra layer, and if let's say he takes now, you get the octopus knight, well, almost an octopus knight, a disabled octopus. So yeah, after bishop to c6, which lines up, which gives the idea of d4 takes, and you have this threat, which after takes, you lose this, so you have to take with this, and it doubles up the pawns, which is bad in a GM game, obviously. So yeah, then a4, which is just threatening to kick this queen around a bit more. So then h4, just try and get this pawn. This is an idea like an alpha zero idea, which alpha zero just likes pushing this pawn and making this, like, getting this constriction of the king. So h3, blocking this pushing of the pawn, which I just told you about. So yeah, queen back. I honestly think it's just to get more pressure on the center and maybe try to reroute here.
And getting away from the tempo.
Yeah, getting away from the tempo, obviously. But yeah, then d4, which was like makes black make a decision. So do you either take and get this pawn, or they take with the knight actually, which is better, gives the octopus knight, or do they take and get this wooden shield of a bishop? It's black's choice. Black takes and gives the wooden shield, but the wooden shield isn't really strong because there's nothing it's actually pressuring. And yeah, it controls a lot of these dark squares, but there's nothing on those dark squares. And yeah, trading it won't work because after takes, the knight can't jump in. Yeah, the bishop just drops back because it really is no purpose there besides being like a target for black's development. So it drops back and comes back to control this diagonal from afar. Since if it's here, it's going to be more easily attacked by black's pieces, like rook here and stuff like that. So if it'll control the diagonal from afar to, well, control more, to get rid of the issues of it. So yeah, queen to e8, which just lines up the move e5. Ah, crap. Don't worry about that. So yeah. Yeah. So then queen to e5. Queen slides to c2, getting this diagonal on the king, and rook to h5. Now the other idea of, well, yeah, b4, going to kick the bishop, a6, just blocking that threat entirely. So then the other idea of bishop h2 comes along, and it's you just plant a knight here. Even though he can take, if he takes, it's a wooden shield bishop again. So he takes anyway because these are GMs and I'm a random 1500. So yeah, black moves to make this file. So as you can see, there's a clear separation on this board of which side each player is playing on. White will definitely be playing on the queen side because all of their major pieces are here. The pawn structure here is more active and has more space, and the white bishop actually steers on this squares, controlling these squares instead of just steering into nothingness. And yeah, you can see the computer saying, "Oh, this might be a better position." And black obviously starts lining up on the king side. As you can see, the farther advanced pawn has more space. Right here, more of its major pieces are on this side of the board. And I mean, its bishop's really just a pawn in disguise. So yeah, after f3 is just stop them from doing some tactics with taking, which there aren't any, but they were probably worried about triple stack, and yeah. Don't mind it. Right, so yeah, after takes 8. So yeah, after f3 he goes rook to g5 because this pawn's a backwards pawn. It can't move up because of en passant or just taken. And yeah, so it's a very strong target for black. White, meanwhile, just brings the rook up and is like just trying to go for a triple stack maybe, or trying to bring in the rook like here. black plays rook to f5, planning on playing queen to g6, obviously. But white plays rook to c3, going for a triple stack, and probably in the future playing b5 and opening up this file for. So yeah, white plays queen to g6, his entire plan. White just doesn't care and plays king to h1 and king to h7. So both kings were moved, and yeah, white plays rook to g1, just guarding the pawn with an extra layer so he can move the queen next. Now he sacrifices he sacrifices the rook basically, because his idea is to get the strong attack might be strong. This won't, because he just gets rid of this bishop. It's getting really strong. He'll probably think that it might be really strong indeed, and white's entire idea is probably just to sacrifice the rook for the bishop anyway in the near future. So yeah, he takes queen takes c2, rook takes c2, and rook takes e5. So you can notice that white is really just up pawn. So yeah, he plays rook a1 and rook e3. He just gets these pawns ready. So yeah, another idea is to get this passer. So yeah, b5 takes, bishop slides, controlling the dark squares, and you can see that all of white's pawns are on light squares to inhibit this bishop, and the major pieces are in dark squares, and the king will be running into a dark square complex soon, like right now. So yeah, king to f5, king to f2, rook moves over, and you can see white has three of its 5 pawns are on light squares, but these pawns really don't matter because they're behind the bishop. These are behind the bishop, so they won't inhibit its movement forward. So yeah, rook d2, e5, which just is getting ready to play e4, trying to break open. Rook c7, g5, rook hits the bishop while playing rook d5. King e6, simultaneously hitting the rook and hitting the bishop. Rook g6, rook g7, attacking the pawn. King f6, and they were going to repeat moves anyway because after this, and yeah, they just agree to the draw at the end, which is, even soccer says it's draw. All right, let's go into our next game between the two 250 rated players. This game was 45 moves. The other game will be 44 moves. All right, let's go. Bishop c4 leads into the Anakin's Karyakin variation, which we reviewed in the last game.
e6, trying to put pawns in the light square because the light square bishop is active and preparing for d5.
And also laying the dark square bishop out.
Queen f3. At the 200 level, people try to play bishop c4 and queen f3 to do the scholar's checkmate, because they have nothing else. Knight c6, trying to develop it. e6, trying to get tempo and blundering it into a fork.
Mm-hmm.
Knight takes e5. Queen c3, trying to defend your undefended piece.
And also attacking the
Knight takes c4, queen takes c4. Knight g4, blundering it completely. b6, trying to fin carry the bishop. b4, trying to make your opponent try to blunder their bishop and not making it go to c5 and trying to fin carry it. f5, trying to attack your opponent's queen and weakening your king at the same time. Queen g3, getting away from the tempo and going for e5.
And keeping pressure on the pawn.
Bishop takes b4, taking the free pawn. Queen takes g7, taking the free pawn. Knight, rook f8, blundering a pawn and protecting itself. Queen takes h7, free pawn. f4, not developing his pieces and blundering queen h5. Queen e4, trying to attack the bishop and the rook. A5, defending the bishop but plundering the rook. Queen f6, attacking the rook and putting pressure on the f file.
But also blundering the bishop.
And blundering the c8 bishop. Queen takes c8. King e7, attacking the queen. Queen takes c6, c7, free pawn, and black takes the rook on a1. White takes another free pawn on b6. Queen takes b1, and white plays c3, trying to attack the bishop, but blundering. Queen takes c1, but black doesn't see it and plays bishop d6, blundering his own queen, which white doesn't see because it's the 200 elo range, blundering his queen. And black sees it and takes it. g3, trying to attack his pawn, and queen b1, trying to take the bishop on c1 even though it's being protected. G takes f3, trying to give open files. And black plays queen takes c1, forcing white to take his queen. Knight takes c1, and bishop takes f4, free pawn. Knight e2, attacking the bishop, and bishop goes back to d6. Rook g1 getting the open file. Rook b1 getting the open file. h4 trying to promote, but blundering rook b1, knight c1, and rook takes c1, king e2, and rook takes g1. And black finds it. And this happens, and white tries to promote. Black plays bishop f4, trying to prevent it. King f4, trying to attack the bishop. Bishop takes d2, free pawn. King goes back to e2, try to take the bishop. Bishop takes another free pawn, and white still goes on the long journey to promote his pawn to a queen. Rook a1, trying to attack the pawn on a2. h7, trying to promote. Rook takes a2, free pawn. King goes to d3, and bishop h8, bishop f6, trying to maintain the square. Maintain the square on h8. King e4, trying to attack it even though you can. Rook takes f2, taking the free pawn. King e2, rook h2, trying to take the last free pawn. King f4, he tries to promote. King g3, he takes the free pawn. King f4, a6, a3, king f3, a2, king e2, and promotes to a queen. King e4, queen a4, and blocking the king from going over here and threatening ladder mate. King f2, rook h1, trying to do something like this.
Mm-hmm.
King g3, rook a3, king g2, queen a3, cutting off most squares for the king. King f2, rook a8, a2 check, king e1, and queen c1, ladder checkmate.
Overall, this was a pretty good game. It was well ended by Sai and pretty good played. There was chances on both sides, but it was just a chaos. So what did we learn? We learned that even at the highest levels, they still would play the same openings as we do. Like, as you can see, these guys were high 200s levels, yet we, or they, or the grandmasters, played the same openings. And I've seen many 1500s and 1000s and to 2,000 players play the same opening as well, which is interesting because I find that even in the same opening in the same game, we can play them at different strengths and show how advanced of our knowledge is in the game. You can see like these guys like hung like a lot of things, yet like one side hung a queen twice, the other side hung a queen once, and it was just like a chaotic game. But even then, you can see this game. It was a very complex game, which ended in a bishop rook versus rook bishop rook for a pawn, and it ended up being a draw because there was practically nothing else White could do besides going for the draw. And yeah, it ended up like that because you can see Black was actually winning in the opening by a lot, yet they made some slight inaccuracies that still lost them the game. And in the other game, the players made multiple blunders, which still led to Black winning. So yeah, it was. I'm mostly made this video to show that at any level, at any point in your chess career, you can play any opening you want because chess is for fun, and that's like the basis of it. You can play a very complex opening, Grunfeld, Roy Lopez, yada yada yada, and you don't really want people to tell you what openings you can play because openings are yours to play and to find new theory, and that's how most theory came around. So yeah, thank you all for watching. Leave a like and subscribe if you want.